Hey guys, Joker the Fool here, and I'm concerned about Wolfenstein Youngblood. I got three reasons for it, and I'm going to lay them all out right here in this video. So, first reason, I really, really became very solid in my head because of this comment. Why the characters look like they were created. Mass Effect Andromeda's character editor. This was from Wolfenstein Youngblood official story trailer. It dropped a few days ago, about a week ago. Um, right now. So, and Mass Effect Andromeda, one of the reasons that game was as much of a mess as it was because it was handled by a B team by um, BioWare. It was handled by a B team of BioWare. BioWare Montreal was the B team at BioWare, and I think there's a B team at Machine Games that's essentially going to be developing this game, and it's going to be a pretty dollar game. It's a more of a side game, not a mainline game. So that's not, the comparison isn't exactly the same. But I do think that when you look at, let's see, if you look at, I've got it silent right now, but I don't think they don't really show much in the ways of cutscenes. You can listen to I'll put all this in the description of the video. A lot of the voice acting to me it's pretty poorly done, and I'm going to go and jump into, the second thing is that a lot of this is the most amount of the game that we've seen, and when we see gameplay, it's very sparing, and there isn't much. So there's probably about 30 seconds of gameplay in this whole trailer, and it's edited really quickly, and it's spliced in with a lot of really cringy dialogue and everything. And I know for a lot of people it's pretty subjective, but it does look pretty decent. But let's see.
You guys are weird.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound good at all, does it? So that's my whole thing. This trailer just worries me because this is the most amount of the game we've seen, and they were really dead set on not showing a lot. And I wouldn't be as concerned if we had gotten any solid gameplay, because I liked Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. I liked it a lot. It was a good game, in my opinion. The story could have been, a bit more complex. Granted, game could have been a bit longer. There was definitely quite a few bugs in there, especially with the DLC. I didn't buy it, but they gave you the first mission for free, and that was an absolutely buggy mess when I played it. But I played 24 hours of Wolfenstein 2. I really enjoyed it, so I think it's a pretty decent game. And one of the things that made me confident in buying this game was they Machine Games at E3 had this was uploaded in July, about the same amount of time between. So in the same amount of time that this game was from release, they released this amount of gameplay, which is basically the first level of the game. It is the first level of the game where you're basically in the submarine and you're, in the wheelchair as Blazkowicz after the events of the New Order. So I won't really get into what happened there, but you get to see this is raw. It wasn't raw, but this is the actual level. It was pretty much like this, tit for tat in the final product, and they were willing to show this. They were willing to show this up to release, meaning that Machine Games is confident in the product, and I think they had every reason to be, because I think it was a pretty decent experience. But I haven't been able to really find any developer gameplay for this for Youngblood, so this really leads to me to be that the games are going to be exceedingly short. It's going to be like probably half the length of Wolfenstein 2, and you could say it's a pretty dollar game. It's got co-op. There'll probably be replay value, and yes, it's pretty valid, but it just doesn't seem to me like if that little bit of game was really good, they'd be willing to show more of it. I just haven't seen that. And this game is going to be it's coming out in July 26th, if I've got my date correct, and it's already April. So I feel like if this game was if they had Machine Games and Bethesda had confidence in this product, they would have showed us more of it than this little trailer that was really dead set on just trying to be all trying to hype you up with all the really cringy dialogue, in my opinion. Again, that's subjective, but most people would agree with me on that. It's got a good ratio though. 15,000 likes to about 3,500 dislikes, so it's a pretty good dislike ratio there. So I do think it'll be a decent game where you can just turn your brain off and essentially go through it, much like how a lot of Wolfenstein, the new Colossus and New Order were. But the cutscenes are, in my opinion, the cutscenes and the story were pretty solid, but there were some moments that I feel like they could have handled with a bit more tact. But and now the third reason, and this one is going to be really disappointing because I just learned this really recently. This game is going to have microtransactions, and they'll be cosmetic only, won't have any loot boxes, but to me, this is a very clear abandonment of one of the things I really liked about Wolfenstein 2 was that there was a certain amount of integrity. Like I remember when Machine Games was interviewed about this game, you had that a multiplayer mode in Wolfenstein 2 would dilute single player, so they were really focused about keeping the single player experience intact, right? And putting a multiplayer mode isn't necessarily the same thing as microtransactions, but it's just if they're willing to do it, with this Wolfenstein game, who's to say that Wolfenstein 3 isn't going to have microtransactions in it? I'd be willing to bet a good bit of money that they'll put in microtransactions because New Colossus didn't sell enough and they want to try and make that money back with the IP. I don't think that's the way to do it. So all these things are really, when you put these things together, the fact that, this trailer, the new trailer is what, we've gotten the biggest look at the game. There shows us at most 30 seconds of gameplay. It's going to have microtransactions in it, which, already, makes me really concerned that Machine Games is, they sort of lost, a bit of a corporate battle, which, I mean, if you look at the sales numbers, it's pretty justified to see why that happened, but it's still disappointing nonetheless. So it's just, I'm very worried about the future of this franchise, and I don't think Youngblood is going to be that good of a game, especially if they're willing to put microtransactions in it. They're selling it as a $30 game, so it's definitely not going to be high quality AAA, a high quality AAA experience. I don't necessarily need it to be like a 50-hour game or anything. I just need it to be good, solid. Maybe 10 hours, but I feel like it's going to be like 4 hours, and if you really know what you're doing, it'll probably be in like 2 hours or something like that. So I just don't think that it's going to be as good as Wolfenstein 2. And if you didn't like Wolfenstein 2, then that's going to be really bad. But I like Wolfenstein 2 quite a bit. I thought it was a pretty good game. I thought I got my $60 out of it, but it's definitely not, that's not, the experience that most people had with it. So this is my case essentially with Wolfenstein, is that I'm worried for the franchise, especially if they're willing to put in microtransactions for it. If Machine Games is like this, and they've definitely lost some sort of battle. They're definitely being a lot more corporate with the series and everything, and that's where my concern is, that the series is becoming corporate. The standards for the franchise are becoming lower, which if you thought Wolfenstein 2 is a bad game, then we're falling off, off the cliff, from that quality standard, which, if you, which is going to be pretty, brutal if, for a good portion of the, good portion of the community who was really deterred from Wolfenstein 2 for a whole myriad of reasons that I won't necessarily get into, because, a lot of them, it's more political, and that's not really what I want to be making videos about. So that's my whole thing, is that the trailer itself doesn't look good in terms of actually showing the consumer what the game's about, and the fact that I think by this time in the coming up to release with Wolfenstein 2, there was a lot more that the consumer had to go through in terms of actual gameplay that it just isn't present for Youngblood, as far as I know. And then the third thing is that the integrity of Youngblood is going to be absolutely ruined. It's going to be diluted by microtransactions. When Wolfenstein 2, Machine Games was very clear that they didn't want to dilute the single player in any sort of way. So not only does Youngblood, not only am I concerned about Youngblood being a bad game, Youngblood is making me concerned about the entire Wolfenstein franchise. So, and as a fan of the first two games of the reboot, that's making me really sad because I want a good trilogy of these Wolfenstein games, or one that was one that would be good to me and good to the fans of the first two games. But I don't think Bethesda is going to let Machine Games make that anymore, because you see it right there on the screen, microtransactions, and microtransactions really seep into everything. I don't think they have any sort of place in this kind of game. If it's supposed to, it's a co-op game with cosmetic stuff, that I just don't see I just don't see the value in it. Paying $10 more for the buddy pass, that's a really, I think it's a good idea. I like that idea a lot, but I don't like the idea of having microtransactions in it. I think a co-op game where you play as two of Blazkowicz's kids, regardless of the gender, I think that's a really nice idea. It's just that the execution has to be good, and I don't think Machine Games is going to be able to execute on it well, because it's going to be developed by a B team, while hopefully the A team is working in Wolfenstein 3, a quality experience. But if Bethesda is willing to shove microtransactions into Youngblood, who knows what they'll do with Wolfenstein 3. So I think I've made my point. These are my concerns for the future of the Wolfenstein franchise. Youngblood being the sort of where I focused my ire on. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you didn't think it was a good video, give it a dislike. And if you want to see more, then you can subscribe to the channel for more. I try to upload videos as often as I can, and when I feel like there's something in the gaming industry that I am compelled to talk about. But I've been Joker the Fool. You've been watching a video about Wolfenstein Youngblood, and I'll see you in the next one.